Hi guys, back with another Dan show. I'm your host Mornay, bringing you the best in dive safety tips and so much more. Yet again we got Dr. France here, and this time we're going to be talking about the bends. What to fear, what to know, and is it really such a big concern? So a good time to kick back, relax and enjoy the show. France, how you doing?
Hey, Mornay. Good to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you've been on the show so many times, it feels like this seat is reserved just for you.
Well, I welcome that, Mornay. Enjoy this very much. Thank you.
Well, Dr. France, today I'd like to talk about decompression, illness, sickness, well, let's call it the bends.
Okay.
You know, I mean, when we use these kind of words or terminology, you can just see divers or, you know, get the heebie-jeebies or they fear these kind of things,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't know if they always understand the topic that well, you know, do they know the mechanisms behind it, how it actually kind of evolves, all that kind of stuff. And the other question is this really such a big thing we need to worry about, or are there other contributing factors that are more of a concern when it comes to diving injuries?
That's an excellent question, Mornay. I think one of the important aspects of decompression illness is the fact that it's relatively unique and it is associated with compressed gas diving.
Okay.
So you need specialized knowledge and you need specialized equipment available to treat it when it happens.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why Dan exists, because when you need help, you need the right help.
Yeah.
So the hotline was created to essentially guide people who have symptoms that are possibly or probably decompression related to get the right help.
Yeah.
Having said that, diving is actually relatively safe. About 1 in 100,000 dives results in a fatality. About 4 in 10,000 dives results in one or another form of decompression illness.
Okay.
So it's relatively rare. When it does happen, of course, you need the right treatment.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, and we can talk about the different features of decompression illness in a moment, I would just like to bring people's perspective back to the fact that there are other more common things that happen to divers than decompression illness.
Absolutely.
As travelers, all the travel hazards, motor vehicle accidents, travel-related infections, travel-related difficulties,
just
lost
on
baggage.
On the plane, you know, some guys got a
Exactly.
cold, you take it
Infections,
to the dive, all
right.
Yeah.
So those are far more common than decompression illness, and people sometimes overemphasize the issue of decompression. So I'd like people to be vigilant travelers first and foremost, and also be sensible about their vaccinations and malaria prophylaxis and the other issues, as well as being aware of decompression. And in terms of decompression, of course, one of the things people can do apart from the dive profiles and monitoring their dive profiles and diving sensibly is to maintain good hydration.
Absolutely.
You know, if you have a higher intravascular or blood vessel volume, then the chances of developing bubbles and the chances of bubbles becoming problematic is less. You know, your blood isn't that sludgy, the blood vessels aren't that shrunken to try and maintain your blood pressure. So it's a very sensible, very simple, very important way of people actually preventing decompression illness, particularly in the popular dive sites that are hot and tropical for the most part.
Well, I guess the hydration you speak of is water or you know, sort of neutral type drinks.
Yes, well, the idea is typically what we call isotonic. In other words, we want to drink essentially what our blood plasma is made of.
Okay.
And energy drinks typically have that. It's always good to have a bit of glucose together with the Ceylon, because it's or the salt, table salt, potassium or sodium chloride, because it's absorbed better. So you prefer to take that, but fresh, safe water is the most important thing. What you want to avoid is something that is going to promote diuresis, in other words, caffeine-containing drinks, because then you're going to lose more, or alcohol, particularly in close proximity to diving. Now, it's untenable to tell people not to drink at all. I mean, it's just non-realistic, even though in some respects one really would like to recommend that. What we essentially recommend is that people shouldn't have alcohol within 8 hours of diving, and they shouldn't be diving with a hangover. Now, of course, that's a relative aspect. Some people will acknowledge whether they're hungover or not, but the key issue is not being dehydrated.
Yeah.
So if you focus on the hydration aspect, first and foremost, I think that's the important thing. And how do you determine that? Well, the easiest way is to make sure that your urine is uncolored. In other words, when your urine is yellow, it means your kidneys have to work hard to conserve water because it doesn't have enough.
Okay.
Now, if you drink coffee and alcohol, of course, there's a diuretic effect, so that would throw off the color test. But for the most part, under typical conditions, if your urine's yellow, you need water. And you need a way to access safe water. And that's a big thing in tropical areas.
Well, it is difficult because, let's be honest, diving is a social sport, and we go away to relax a little bit. But I guess, once again, don't overindulge. You know, have fun, but just be aware. You know, and I guess the urine test, you can do that on your own. You don't need your buddy to check that.
No, assuming your color vision is fine. You know, you don't need a second witness. You know, maybe that's not true for everyone, but hey, we give you the benefit of that.
Well, I tell you what, you know, Dan is a great organisation, but it's also a cool organisation.
Yes,
you know, so we got some great products, or Dan gear, and especially, you know, talking about water. We've got this nice little black bottle, and it's got the little slogan on there: more water, less bubbles. And I think that really speaks to staying hydrated, and it's a nice little message. Got the Dan logo on. They go they're relatively cheap. You can get them on the store. Just give us a buzz. We can help you with that. But you know, I think we can go on for, you know, a very long time talking about all these things. But to be honest, we got some great content yet again, you know, whether it be an article format. I'm just thinking about the article you wrote a few years ago, all that tingles.
It's not bends.
Yeah, very nice.
Well, I could speak to that quickly. The reason why we wrote that is because people became very paranoid. You know, initially people did not recognize symptoms of decompression illness, so it was necessary to really draw people's attention to it. We needed divers to be aware of it, and of course doctors to be aware of it in emergency room settings. There has been a little bit of an overshoot where people really have thought that anything that tingles is decompression illness, and we still would prefer people to be suspicious than be in denial. In other words, we would rather that people call the Dan hotline more frequently than they necessarily need to, than not calling us when they should. So we want to preserve that mindset, but at the same time, we want people to understand that there are what we call mononeuropathies. Now, that's a fancy word for saying single nerve related lesions. And the example everybody's familiar with is essentially a funny bone strike. You know, if you hit your elbow in a certain way, or you lay your elbow in a certain way, or you sit cross-legged in a certain way, just to use another example, your foot starts tingling, you get pins and needles. Now, the fact that it happens while you're sitting means that it hasn't been related to diving, right? Absolutely. So it's not a bubble-related problem. This was a sitting-related problem. But in a person who's been diving, there's always this suspicion, could it be decompression-related? Now, it's extremely unlikely for a bubble to cause that discrete type of lesion. So exactly like a funny bone strike, or exactly like the sort of pins and needles you get in your foot when sitting cross-legged, or exactly the way you might get a numbness when you're sitting on a hard chair, which could be the equivalent of sitting on a gunnel of a boat, for instance. So we want to remind people that there are situations in which they tingle in normal life. And in those situations, not to become paranoid just because they've been diving. So I think that's the emphasis that we wanted to bring. But still, if there are untoward symptoms, particularly if function is affected, you know, it's one thing to have a bit of numbness, but if you've got paralysis, that's another thing. So function loss is always red flagged, always deserves an inquiry. But if there's just a mild sensory area that is affected, it's usually a single nerve issue. Still call the hotline, but you know, if we reassure you, realize that it is something we can reassure people about.
Better be safe than sorry, I
Agreed.
guess.
Absolutely, yes. yes.
Well, I do recall, I think you also mentioned that, old injuries play a role sometimes where they might start packing up a little bit again,
Yes.
and then you might confuse that for,
Right.
a case of the bends or whatever
Yes.
the case might be. So a very interesting article.
Yes.
It's quite a long, chunky one, but for those that enjoy it, please do download. It'll be in the links, or if you enjoy sort of viewing a presentation style information piece, we also have that available on the YouTube channel. But I think that's all we have time for this week.
Sounds good, Mornay.
Yeah.
Just about the old lesions, the principle was because of blood flow restrictions. The evidence is a bit sketchy, and of course old lesions also would be prone to re-injury and straining. So even there, sometimes we don't want people to be overemphasized, but if function goes, or if mental function goes, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. The other things, sometimes it's a red herring, but as you rightly say, better safe than sorry.
Well, great take-home message there. In any case, guys, catch us next time for another Dan show. It was great having you, Dr. France. And until next time, thank you for watching.
Cheers.